reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Great, thank you. And thank you to everyone who is joining here in person this evening or is watching this online at home via the live stream. We have a new feature as part of our agenda tonight with a school spotlight. We hope to make this a more regular part of our board meetings to highlight some of the good work that is going on across District 67 schools. And tonight, we're going to hear an update on what's happening at DPM from Sam, Megan, Tom, and the team. So without further ado, I will turn it over to them to share their report. Welcome.
Hello and good evening. My name is Tom Harrion, and I have the distinguishable honor of serving as the principal at Deer Path Middle School each and every day. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to share some of the great work and experiences that we are providing at Deer Path Middle School. It's my pleasure to introduce myself and the rest of our team here as we share some news and information with you about our month of kindness and our kindness campaign at Deer Path Middle School. First, we have Mrs. Megan Eigenrau, our 5-6 Associate Principal. We have Mr. Ben Niedich, our 5-6 Dean of Culture. We have Mr. Sam Paulson, our 7-8 Associate Principal. And we have Mr. Rob Wegley, our 7-8 Dean of Culture. And we have some really exciting guests. Special students coming from grades 6 through 8. We have Helen Kennedy. Good wave, Helen. We have Mimi Hirschfield. We have Parker Koval. We have Henry Mulligan. Natalie Pelser. We have Eden Vishnabat. And we have Nina Locano. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Paulson. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Harrion. So at the middle school, we're committed to teaching the whole child. And today's article for the Sit Down with Sam community engagement event, I highly recommend it. You should come out. It was an article that discussed the different areas of development that students go through in their middle school years specifically. And we always keep that in mind as we think about the programmatic choices we're making, both curricularly, academically, extracurricularly, you name it, at the middle school. And one of the statements in the article really fit what we're trying to accomplish with the kindness campaign. So I'll read you the quote from the article. Moral development is defined as an individual's ability to make principled choices in how to treat one another. During early adolescence, many of the attitudes, beliefs, and values that young adolescents develop remain with them for life. They move away from blanket acceptance of adult moral judgment to the development of their own personal values. However, they usually embrace the values of parents or key adults. The increased capacity of young adolescents for analytical thought, reflection, and introspection characterizes the connection between their intellectual and moral development. And that is why it is so critical that we as adults in the building model this behavior of kindness that we want them to develop themselves. In the middle school years, this is the time that they're going to become the people they'll eventually grow into. And we want them to embody it not just at middle school, but wherever they go once they leave our doors.
So to further Mr. Paulson's thoughts, I just wanted to share a little bit about our core values at Deer Path. We have developed core values, and we call them PIC Funtastic. What that stands for is perseverance, integrity, compassion, and curiosity. And then we have Funtastic, which is a made-up name from the students, but really it represents our joy in learning that we want to apply to everything we do. So we took the core values and we embedded them in our behavior practices, into our curriculum, and then also into these month-long initiatives that we started this year. So far we've had the month of gratitude, which was in November, and then in February we started the month of kindness. So Mr. Wegley is going to share a little bit about what we've done throughout the month of February for our month of kindness, and then the students will share some examples as well.
Hey everyone. As Mrs. Eigenrauh said, February has been our month of kindness campaign, and we are rewarding students for positive and expected behaviors with snowflakes. We have some for you guys if you'd like. quite simply, it's been snowflakes galore. Teachers are rewarding students for having expected behaviors in their classroom. So they have target behaviors that they're putting on the board, like having appropriate materials when you get to class. And they are rewarding each student who comes in with appropriate materials to say, hey, this is what we're expecting. Thank you for doing what's expected. Staff in the hallways are giving students snowflakes for following hallway expectations, walking appropriately, getting to class on time. In the classroom, beyond just the target behaviors, anytime they're doing things like raising hands or having their materials, they could get a snowflake for it. The coolest thing about it has been twofold. It's students loving it. I had an 8th grade student go out of my office today after I gave him a snowflake for helping his friends make better choices. And he whispered to his friend as they were walking out, this is like a 6-foot-tall 8th grade 14-year-old going, dude, that's my 3rd snowflake today. And he was pumped. But then also it's just seeing the interactions that students are having with staff and with each other. It's fostering really positive interactions with staff and students, which is awesome. And it's also encouraging students to be kind and make kind choices when they're interacting with one another, as well as adults. So it's been really, really neat. I have these for you guys. I'll make sure you guys get them.
Our goal was to make the initiatives that we've been doing at Deer Path all-encompassing, and as a result, we've hosted other events for teachers and students to support our month of kindness, besides the snowflakes. So teachers have been participating in random acts of kindness, where something small, a box of candy, a Post-its, fun things, are placed in their room with a little sticker or a little tag that says random act of kindness, and hoping that they pay it forward, and they have been. Just to bring a little bit of joy to someone else and create that ripple effect within our community. Our students had the opportunity to spread the love through Valentine's Day. They were decorating cards during lunch, and the lines were, tremendous, but like causing a blockage tremendous, because there were so many students who wanted to show their kindness and love toward each other, which is amazing. We also hosted a kindness assembly with our guest speaker, Tom Coverly. Mr. Coverly talked to students about making positive choices, the impact of their actions on others, and kindness. We really want to thank the APT and the Spirit for their generosity in organizing that event and bringing Mr. Coverly to DPM. And now, maybe the most important part of our presentation, our students. So I'd like to turn it over to them so that they can share about their experiences. We'll start with our wonderful 6th graders, Helen and Mimi and Parker.
Hello, my name is Helen Kennedy. I would like to introduce my friends Parker Koval and Mimi Hirschfield. We are all 6th graders at Deer Path Middle School. We are happy to be here this evening with you in the kindness campaign that Deer Path has made an impact on our school and us as students.
Earlier this month, my 2 friends and I made a decision to come together and include others at lunch. Helen, Parker, and I noticed that a student with different needs was sitting alone at lunch regularly. We wanted to make sure that this student had someone to sit with every day, so the 3 of us decided that we would include this student when we eat lunch together.
The reason we decided to include this student with different needs is because we knew that it was the right thing to do in this situation. One of our core values is integrity and compassion as well.
The reason I chose to sit with this student is because, yes, I do like to sit with my friends, but I saw this student sitting for days by themselves. It seemed that it would be a good idea to sit with them. I walked over with Mimi and Parker, and we sat down and just started talking with each other and making small talk. Now, sitting together is a regular thing that we do. One other thing is I know we have been asked to talk about kindness campaign. The one thing I have also learned is kindness is a two-way street, because I feel I have received more kindness than I gave to begin with.
The reason I decided to sit with this student is because my brother Will also has different needs. He's a 7th grade student, and at lunch sometimes I go down to see him, and I see that he is sitting with some of his friends. I really love knowing that he is sitting with others, and that others are actually talking to him and engaging him in their conversations. So I put myself in this student's shoes, and I know that this student's family would be so happy, but I also know that this student feels happy knowing that someone wants to sit with him and talk to him.
The reason I chose to sit with this student is because if I was sitting alone at lunch on a daily basis, it would make me feel alone. I think it would make anyone feel really alone. I've seen other students look at him before and make the decision not to say anything or do anything about it. That is also part of the reason I chose to sit with this student. We are able to recognize the impact that we've made on this student. The main reason I made this decision is because it really did feel like the right thing to do. We want to make a positive contribution to DPM, and this is how we try to do it every day.
Hi, I'm Natalie Pelser, and I'm in 7th grade at Deer Path Middle School. A few weeks ago, there was a new girl in my grade, and me and one of my friends went around the cafeteria looking for her. The reason we did this was because we didn't want her to sit alone, because nobody wants to sit alone. This is one of the things I do to be kind, and I honestly love being kind because it makes me feel good and it also feels right. I feel the word kind has been used so much it's lost its true meaning. I like how people use the word kind, but I want people to be sincere about it. For me, kindness means being friendly, generous, and considerate without expecting anything in return. Being kind can have a meaningful impact on someone's day and possibly change the direction of their life. Thank you for listening and be kind.
Hi, I'm Nina Loicano, and I'm a 7th grader at DPM. Through Kindness Month, Deer Path has taught us that kindness is essential. It has shown us new ways to be inclusive of others and respect our peers. As Deer Path has been welcoming new students, I've noticed how accepting and kind everyone has been. A new student came to Deer Path about 2 weeks ago, and she became my locker neighbor. I got asked to help her, and I hope I was successful. I invited her to lunch to make her first day easier. It might not seem like a big deal, but inviting someone to sit with you at lunch or even just saying hi in the hallway can impact them significantly. As you can imagine, middle schoolers in general tend to be cliquey, but with the help of the staff, I've learned how to be more inclusive of others and make new friendships. The weekly reminders in SEL and homeroom are a great way to show everyone how important it is to make others feel welcome. Overall, Kindness Month has shown us how to be inclusive of others and treat people with kindness. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eden Vishnabat, and I'm in 8th grade at DPM. And since 2nd grade, my mom has always told me before I go out to the car to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And I've always made jokes like, why not the head or why not the leg? But now 5 years later, I think I understand. Even before religious reasons, my mom has always told me to be kind and to understand and accept people regardless. And I'm so happy DPM encourages kids to do just that. The reason I was chosen here today was because Mr. Regley just so happened to notice an act of kindness in the lunchroom with my friend Reza. But the truth is that there are so many acts of kindness shown at DPM, and I just so happen to be recognized. To show kindness is to be a helping hand, to be a good friend, to learn and grow from mistakes, but above all, kindness is to make people feel happy. With something as small as a compliment, you could be able to make someone's day just a little bit better. DPM fosters a space that people are excited to come to because they're surrounded by others who make them feel happy, which is something pretty difficult to find in your average middle school. There are many things happening in the world that are negative, so I see no reason why people should add to that when we are all capable of kindness. The truth is that kindness is a choice, and I hope we can all choose to be kind.
Hi guys, my name is Henry Mulliken and I'm an 8th grader at DPM. I'm here to show you how the kindness campaign made an impact on our students. Earlier this month, it was during lunch and some of my friends were horseplaying in the lunchroom and they accidentally bumped into a container with ranch dressing in it and all the individual packets fell out. So instead of just ignoring it, I went over to help and I even got others to help, which actually shows one of our core values, which is integrity. And I knew that it was the right thing to do, and that I also took a leadership role by getting others to help. And I didn't know that Mr. Wegley was watching, but he was watching and he was proud of me, and that's why I'm here today telling you about it. One thing I do is try to make positive contributions to our school by using kindness and getting others to make better choices.
I have a lump in my throat. You guys are amazing people, you really are. Sorry. Just shows really the impact that our kids can have on us as staff. So you guys should really be proud of yourselves, and your parents should be proud as well. I often say Deer Path is what a middle school ought to be, and I think that just proved it. So thank you again for the opportunity to share this evening. I could not be more proud of our students and the experiences that we're offering at Deer Path and the team that supports this important work. We continue to strive and meet educational excellence while helping students develop core beliefs that will carry them through to success as an adult. So a huge thank you to my colleagues, to the Deer Path staff, but most importantly to the students for sharing with all of you this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to have one slight change to the agenda. Add in, well,
Can we get a picture with
real
everybody?
quick, before you guys all leave, could we
Can
get
you all come back for just a sec?
just a picture with the students and the staff would be terrific.
Could you guys just come up here and stand, maybe stand behind us, around us?
This is our first time doing this Tell Me Something Good stuff, and we are really loving it. So we really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us tonight.
Wow. Why did it take us so long to do this? What a great ad. Thank you, guys. All right, so Dr. Montgomery, that is your act to follow. We are going to move to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to give Ms. Adams just a moment to put it up on the screen, and I'll get started.
They didn't look nervous.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. So the topics that I'm going to talk about tonight are as follows. I'm going to save the normal COVID update for the report section, which I will also lead with the help of our staff, as well as Jennifer Smith is here from Franzik to answer any questions that the board may have. We'll start with Portrait of a Graduate, touch on the listening sessions that happened in DPM, as well as student shadowing that's on the horizon, talk about the food service review, and then finish with the 115 facility master planning, just an overview of what that process is. So as we start talking about the Portrait of a Graduate, which I've talked about several times, I just want to make sure I highlight that this event is happening on March 3rd. And as a reminder, it's a tri-district initiative between 65, 67, and 115, and it will help us develop a unified and updated vision among the three districts around the 21st century competencies that Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and Knollwood students need to be successful in college, career, and beyond. The design team is made up of 150 stakeholders, and they will meet over the course of from March 3rd to May 3rd, 4 different times to pull together this process and this actual portrait for all 3 districts. So you can see the 4 dates as listed, and we are hoping that the completed portrait will be unveiled by graduation in early June. We were supposed to begin this process in February, but due to travel and weather of our facilitator, we pushed the first date to March 3rd, and I am thrilled to be able to commence this process next week on Thursday. Moving on, I had the opportunity to meet with a group of 8th graders there was 20 plus students, and I took time to visit with them and ask them many of the same questions I was asking the adults in the district thus far, which is what are we doing really well? What are our areas of growth? And then I finished with, if you were superintendent, what is the one thing that you would change? Which was my favorite question to ask them, and I'll share some of the responses. They were wise beyond their years, and it was probably the highlight of my month, to be quite candid with you, to just spend time with them. On March 9th, I am shadowing an 8th grade student for the entire day, absent lunch, to give them time to be away from me, to be quite honest, because they might need a break from me by then. I'm also shadowing a high school student. I think that is this Friday. So this Friday, the high school, and then March 9th for the 8th grader. This is something I've done previously in my leadership roles. It gives a very unique perspective of what the students are experiencing day in and day out that sometimes I think we lose focus of what's really important and what decisions that we're making over here in the AC doesn't sometimes translate well into our end user, which is our students. So it is an exhausting day usually when I have these experiences, but also some of the most rewarding I ever have. Here are the trends of opportunities identified by the 8th grade students. They were not shy, nor should they have been. So I was very happy to get their perspectives, but to give you an idea of some themes. One was around tech. So there was a conversation that we have a lot of tech and a lot of resources, but they wanted me to know that we as adults could benefit from realizing the exhaustion that they experience at the end of a day of tech, and then when they're going home and we're asking them to do more homework on screens, that how fatigued they can get around the use of tech. They don't think we should have less tech. They think that we should be more mindful in the way in which we're using it to expand their learning. And I thought that was, I would say that to teachers. So for them to say it, it just really shows you how in tune they are with what they're experiencing. This builds on the second topic, which is just overall workload. And they were hoping that teachers would be more accommodating of students' schedules and to understand that everything that they are doing, not only so if every teacher is scheduling a test on a given day or being mindful of the amount of homework that they're being given, also with all of their extracurricular activities that they're active in. I did a deep study into homework in my previous district. It is an electrifying topic because when you start looking at the research does not support the returns on homework unless it's in a very specific criteria that's being met, which means it has to be timely feedback that is specific. It can't be check marks. It can't be 10 out of 10s. You have to have pointed feedback in a very short turnaround if you want to get your research-based gain on homework. I haven't started that work there, nor am I saying that I will. However, I thought it was very important that the students were bringing that to our attention. Another topic of interest was phones. They fully believe that we should not have phones during the school day, but they would like to have them during the lunch period. They think that they're disconnected from their world, and that would help them if they were able to interact in that way during that short period of time. That's also another lightning bolt topic, to be honest with you. In my previous district, we did let them use it in lunch, but not everybody was happy about that, so it was just helpful to hear their perspective. Lesson delivery, they want more, or what resonates with them is more hands-on lessons. So their request is to make lesson delivery as hands-on as possible, as collaborative as possible. They are okay with lectures, but they want them to be peppered in with collaborative opportunities. They said the electives are the most prone to collaborative hands-on approaches, which makes sense, but they want the core teachers to also be mindful of that they learn at a greater depth, their words, not mine, if they are engaged in collaborative lesson planning or acts of lesson. World languages, they really have they want to build the rigor in world languages across all of the different languages that we offer. They don't want to lose them and want to just expand opportunities for that. LA seminar, this was a big topic for them. They want us to reconsider our leveling of LA and what we're doing with the LA seminar and how it's meeting their needs or not. So I thought that was interesting because we moved away from Quest and Explore and Advanced LA in the past. These students were saying they would like us to continue to have that discussion. And they said that math is having the different LAs, why doesn't, math has different levels, LA does not. And they think that there would be, I'm going to use words they didn't use, they were resonating towards more differentiation within the classrooms. So if we're not leveling, they want more diversified experiences based on the level of the performance of the student. Standardized testing, they don't really understand the purpose, and they said they're stressful, and we haven't had the purpose really shared with us of the why, and that was more of just an FYI for us. And then around scheduling, they would like the option of having to pick encore rotation instead of being placed. So they want self-selection. So I committed to them that this would not be merely I listen and check off a box. That's not what the purpose of this was. It's I'm going to listen. We are going to take good notes. We're going to go back to the leadership team. I'm going to share it with the board because these are our end users and they have thoughts, and these conversations should continue to happen as we work through planning for the future. And I want to thank them for being so open with me, because it took courage for them. They didn't know me. And for 20 or 30 of them to come in and have a robust discussion that was exceptionally thoughtful. I didn't agree with everything they said, but I also most definitely didn't disagree with most everything what they said. And their voices are underutilized, in my opinion, and we can do a better job as educators across the country of listening to our students. Next topic I would touch on is the food service review. We've been talking about this a little bit, but I just want to highlight it tonight to make sure that everyone is aware that we are currently reviewing and hoping to develop a common vision for food service in our districts. It's just time to revisit what we're doing in terms of menu, nutritional standards, grab and go. And I would like to thank Lisa Olson, who is a registered dietitian, who is a part of the APT, who is helping kind of fuel this conversation. And not only are we looking at this at 67, but we're also looking at it at 115. And Quest has come to the table in a very big way to help be a part of this discussion. And I would just commend them in their partnership of trying to continue to evolve and grow. The last topic I have before we move to reports is I hope that this is not, I hope this is familiar, this picture, because this is the postcard that we sent out to all residents announcing the roadmap for the facilities oversight committee's work around facilities improvement. We are having a community forum on March 1st at 6 p.m. It will conclude around 7 p.m. and then we'll have tours, guided tours that commence after that. The reason I'm talking about this at 67, as well as the fact that I've asked Dr. Leali to talk about it tonight in her board meeting in 65, is our students will matriculate into 115 and our parents need to know what's happening because in all candor, any work we do, the students that will benefit the most will be the students that are attending 67 and 65 when you look at a multi-yeared facilities plan. I would ask you to make sure that you are registering ahead of time because we are requesting registration so we know how to accommodate the size of audience that we have. And we will have an update from Perkins and Will, an update from our staff as well about projects that are happening, and then a panel discussion really honing in on the future of education and what we think are lessons learned post-pandemic. It should be a robust conversation, and my hope is that we'll walk away asking folks for feedback of where they are currently, and that will hopefully help guide us in the coming months as we continue our planning process. This is a shameless plug. Rebecca and I were able to go to the National Conference on Education last week in Nashville, and I was pleased to be able to have 4 presentations and then also led a STEM committee of which I am a national chair for the AASA's Superintendent's Consortium. This type of work fills my bucket, and it also is powerful to see what's happening across the country with leaders and being able to talk to them through these presentations and through this committee work ensures that I am staying state of the art in my leadership and learning from other colleagues who are doing wonderful things across the country. I will finish this section about making sure or encouraging you to follow us on social media. We are building out, the communications team is building out in a big way our work on social media, and I would commend both Melissa and Julia for their work to make sure that this is alive and well, and the reception that we've been having from our community has been wonderful, and we're continuing to expand that. So if you've not already done so, please consider following us at Lake Forest SD67, and we will be sharing the wonderful things that are happening on a daily basis in addition to some of the things that we heard tonight. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Matt. Are there questions from the board for Matt? I have a question for Matt. Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's something that you took away from AASA last week that was interesting or you think is applicable for District 67?
So the thing that resonated the most was we spent a half a day on Wednesday talking about STEM and the importance of STEM and how to incorporate design work into the high school and upper middle school arenas for suburban settings. So how do you increase the amount of opportunities where kids are having real-world applications through STEM in grades 5 through 8 and then 9 through 12? And how do you also then increase the real-world application of not only the science realm but the math realm? And how are we ensuring that our students are being exposed to algebra in the middle school level when at all possible, and how that then impacts their trajectory moving through high school and beyond? I started to sweat there for a second.
It's a live meeting, Matt.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get. Well, thank you, Matt, for the superintendent's report. We'll now move to our first opportunity for public participation. As a quick reminder, we will have 2 opportunities for public participation this evening. This first opportunity is reserved for comments about items that are on our agenda, so I'd please ask anybody who wishes to speak to keep your comments focused on that area for this opportunity. Our second opportunity is open to any topic that somebody would like to speak about. We do have a couple of guidelines for public participation that are subject to Board Policy 2-230 that I'll just quickly reiterate right now. As a reminder, we really do welcome attendance and public comment at all of our meetings. A couple of these guidelines are as follows. Please, interested speakers, state your name before addressing the board. Everyone will be granted a maximum of 3 minutes to provide comment on school district matters. Please, before anyone wants to speak a second time, we'll wait until every member of the audience who wishes to speak have been allowed to do so. And lastly, to provide accurate response, detailed questions that are posed to the board during public comment will be listened to and taken under advisement. As a quick reminder, anyone is always welcome to meet with school officials to receive information, discuss ideas, or express concerns. If anyone has a public or anyone from the public has any letters or written materials, they can be submitted to Tiana, our board clerk, for public record, who will also be timing public participation this evening. So with that, are there any members of the public who would like to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we will move to our first report of the evening, which is a report from Matt on COVID mitigation policies.
Thank you, sir. So I will start giving an overview of where we are within our COVID numbers as usual. I will then also provide an update on the case that we are currently listed in, as well as then talking about, or there'll be an opportunity for questions, and then I will talk through two possible scenarios of where I'm seeking your consensus around how we are operating from a governance standpoint, and then my recommendation for how we move forward in the coming days and weeks regarding COVID mitigation strategies. So giving a quick overview, this is the data that you would see normally in the update, so just sharing it. Right now, in 60045, the case count is 12.8 per 100,000 people for the rolling average of the incidents. And for Lake County, it is 16.2, so just a shy under the county average. And you can see how much those numbers have fluctuated since January, where the peak was happening. If you look at our dashboard, right now, current staff and staff quarantines are at 0. Known staff cases are also at 0 across the boards. Student quarantines are 5 or under in each of the buildings, and then known student cases are 5 or under in every building as well. If we look at the current case, as you may know, there's approximately 150 districts across the states, 840 that are included in the lawsuit. Both 67 and 115 are named. A temporary restraining order enjoining the governor from enforcing his executive order, including universal masking and close contact school exclusions, was issued in early February. The Illinois Attorney General filed an appeal, and we found out the results of that appeal last Friday when the appellate court dismissed the appeal and held the school districts retain local control to make decisions relating to the pandemic. Based on that decision, you got an email I sent an email out on Saturday that said that we would be continuing our current mitigation strategies of masking being strongly recommended but not required, with the understanding that we would be having a discussion tonight for 67. In addition, we would be having a conversation with 115 on March 8th. Know that when a student is COVID-19 positive, we send a communication to the family of those students who are within 6 feet of their probable exposure and our recommendation with regard to quarantining and symptom monitoring. Close contacts no longer have to quarantine themselves, and these decisions will be at the discretion of students and their families. We are also offering additional personal protection, including KN95 masks to any staff member who requests it, and all other layered mitigation measures will remain in place for the time being. Masks are still, however, required for students who are riding the bus, and that is a federal requirement, and student athletes who are participating in extracurriculars in school districts that may have different expectations are required to follow the expectations in a given site in which the extracurricular event or interscholastic event is being held. With this whole, we heard a wonderful discussion about kindness. I've been hitting the kindness campaign over and over, regardless of a parent's choice or a student's choice or a staff's choice to be masked or not masked. I am asking for or imploring kindness as we work through these trying times together. And we have been mask optional, I think, since February 7th, so approximately 2 weeks of school. And I've been urging folks to make sure that they are being respectful of other people's wishes. In 115, I was asked about as well as in 67, of how I am helping staff and students go through these conversations. And with 700 staff members between 2 districts, this is what I'm asking the staff to be mindful of. They may remind students that wearing a mask is strongly recommended. Staff with a medical condition may ask students in their class to voluntarily wear a mask, and staff and students may not pressure each other to wear or not wear a mask, to go back to being respectful of each other's opinions. And then finally, anyone who is not treating each other, whether it be staff or students, with respect, will be handled in a way in which is addressing those concerns, because the bullying, intimidation, and harassment policy is in place, whether it be a staff or a student, and we will ensure that we are taking proactive measures to work through any issues that come up in that area. I would like to take a pause and say, what questions have I elicited for me, or from me, or specific questions about the case that you may have for Jennifer as she's with us tonight? Post questions, then I'll talk about governance structures and my actual recommendation.
I have a question for Jennifer. Jennifer, can you just speak to potential next steps, if there are any, regarding the court case?
Sure. So today, documents were filed by the state defendants, by the governor, IDPH, ISB, to file an appeal to the Illinois Supreme Court. Unlike the appellate court appeal, which they had a right to appeal to the appellate court and get a decision, the Supreme Court is discretionary. The Supreme Court can say, we are not taking it. They don't have to take it. The documents that were filed today asked for Supreme Court review, asked for expedited Supreme Court review, and asked for a stay of the either a stay of the TRO, because the appellate court did not. The appellate court decided it was moot but did not vacate. So either a stay of the TRO or clarification that the TRO is vacated by based on the mootness. So what to expect next would be the Supreme Court to decide the stay or vacation issue on the TRO, and then also decide, first of all, decide whether they're going to take it, and if they do take it, ultimately we would get a decision from the Supreme Court.
And is the state Supreme Court under any sort of timeline requirements to make a decision on whether they would take it or not?
They are not. So I can't project with any certainty the timeline from here.
Thank you.
I was wondering whether or not the cost of us being involved in this litigation, because obviously we didn't choose to be involved in this litigation, is covered by insurance, or it's something that's coming out of the school budget.
So we are being represented, so this is where it gets a little tricky. We're being represented through CLIC. So a consortium is shouldering the cost as a group for our representation. That is being done through Terry Engler's firm. So that is being offset because it's divided between numerous districts. Jennifer and her team through Franzik are our general counsel. So they are also, they would be an extra layer of counsel support above and beyond who is representing us actually during the case itself.
Matt, I've got another question for you. Can you say more about your criteria and decision-making around which metrics you look at and how you assess whether or not to move into a mask recommended policy versus a mask required policy?
So I can, but maybe before that discussion, we could see if there's consensus still for me as the superintendent, in light of where we are with the ability to have local control, for me as the superintendent / CEO to be making these recommendations or these decisions on a day in and day out around COVID mitigation strategies. That was where we were in July. In July, we talked together that I would be making the decision on the governance of how we would utilize COVID mitigation strategies, with the caveat that if I made a decision that 4 of you or more were uncomfortable with, we would be having a discussion and I would be moving in a different direction. And prior to me making that decision, there was also the assumption that each one of you would be conferred with individually to garner your individual thoughts and address any questions you may have. So before I get into what would move me one way or another, it would help me out tremendously, independent of this lawsuit, if you are still in support with me as the superintendent making those day-to-day decisions. And while we're not voting, I would still like to hear from you on where you stand on that issue.
So I will say that I am still comfortable with us operating in that fashion. At this point, I do believe that as a governance body at our oversight, that we should stay in that oversight place, and that you are the person who we've hired to manage the district. So I am still comfortable staying in that place.
I am also comfortable with local control, having our superintendent who knows our district, who knows our area, to make the decisions that are to the best of his abilities to make a decision and for the best of the community.
I stand by where we were earlier this year, that you make a lot of management decisions that we defer to you on as a board. We try not to micromanage and stay involved at a high level. I think having worked with us over the last several months, that if there is something that we feel strongly about, we come to you, and you've done a wonderful job of coming to us to ask for our input along the way. So we appreciate that.
I'm fully in support of the current situation we have with you guiding us and leading us as you have. I echo everyone's sentiments. I mean, you guys have all said it more eloquently than I am, but I'm fully in support as well. So.
I also concur, and am happy that we can have local control whenever possible.
Yeah, lastly, I agree with that. I do prefer local control. I also agree with my fellow board members that this is a management decision, which is where we netted out in July. I do think that there is an important role for the board in providing oversight and asking questions to better understand what the decision-making process is, which is within the board's right, but this is a management issue.
Thank you all. To move into Justin's question about, and I'll start just where I am right now, my recommendation, or what I'm seeking consensus around, is that I would like to remain in a mask recommended environment. And there are several reasons why that I have landed at that position given or under these current circumstances. The one is solely living in the fact around due process and my concerns about, can I give due process if we were to be in a mask required environment to all of this, any student who may refuse to wear a mask, and how that is hinging on not my due process, but the Lake County Health's due process capacity. That concerns me in that, based on my understanding of where Lake County Health is right now and their appetite for going through due processes at any level is so low that I do not think we would be able to fulfill any due process challenges if we were in a mask required environment at this time. Other reasons that I believe that we should be in a mask recommended environment are as evidence of where the state is going and where the county is going in terms of numbers. So when I showed you the numbers, of the county as well as our own numbers, we are quickly at a level that we have not seen in a long time. And those numbers are continuing to drop. The numbers that we are seeing that we haven't seen since, where are we, like September? Remember where we are with vaccines as well. So it is a whole new world in terms of when I look at, for example, what the Metrics Advisory Committee came up with. Those ranges that they came up with were pre-vaccines. So those numbers continue to be favorable. In addition, the state is lifting their mandate on February 28th. Cook County and I'm new to the state, so forgive me, I didn't realize that Cook County operated independently, but they just released this and I wasn't trying to be funny, like I really didn't know that. But the Trib just put out a couple hours ago that Cook County's also going mask optional on Monday. So I think there is a trend across the state that mask optional is a place in which we can still maintain safety for our staff and students. I said all that. Now I want to answer your question specifically. There is still fluctuation that could occur. And if the fluctuation occurs, so what are some examples? So what if we saw another Omicron? Then we're in a completely different situation where I would be recommending masking. What if there was an outbreak identified through Lake County Health in a given building or a given grade band? So if Cherokee was experiencing a high case count, there are scenarios where I would be saying masks are now required in that given situation. So I think it's going to ebb and flow as we continue to learn how to live with this virus long term. What's difficult for me to tell you, and I've said this for the last 23 months as a leader, giving you specific numbers that will trigger a mask required environment is most challenging for me. And the only analogy I can give that is oversimplistic in nature is if somebody asks me how many inches of snow have to fall before I call a calamity day. I can't give you that answer because there are too many variables and interplay with each other for me to actually isolate which one is indicative of a given action. Again, big old asterisk, snow days are no way in comparison to mask optional or mask recommended, or in any way am I minimizing the volatility around this virus. So while I don't want to go into specifics about the families because the families are there's such a small percentage, yes, we are doing everything we can and we are satisfying everything we can do absent requiring masks, we are able to do and help meet their needs.
I have a question. How about teachers? Same thing to teachers. Are you finding that you're getting support from this approach, or do you have a lot of teachers absent as a result of this approach?
So I think so it's leveling out, and that's really important. So February 7th, so DPM really hit a high level of absences on the 9th. That was our highest date, and that was the day we were having a school-wide assembly. And then the numbers have been dwindling in terms of absences where we're achieving a new normal. We are also working with any staff member who is medically fragile or needs accommodations to the best of our ability. But there are times when we are saying that you are going to have to use leave because we cannot accommodate your specific request and still be able to perform your job functions. Rebecca, did I answer that appropriately?
Thank you.
So have we seen, speaking of attendance, you made me think, have we seen any dramatic changes to the trends other than what you just mentioned over the 2 weeks since we've shifted in this way? I mean, you can see the numbers. If people are absent, it's obviously not due to COVID, but have we seen any changes in our attendance trends that don't make sense, I guess?
So without having the data in front of me, I'm going to tell you no. I would like to corroborate that and keep watching. And the reason I'm comfortable with saying no is that Rebecca and I would hear about this, and we have not heard about this. And we were monitoring the attendance very closely that first week. We did not monitor it the second week because we did not see huge fluctuations the first week.
So then my follow-up question is, are there adjustments that you think need to be made to the dashboard in consideration of what should we be looking at as a community to understand decision-making going forward? Because I agree with you that with vaccination and with all these things, like there are many factors that have changed in the landscape since a lot of those metrics were thought about. To my knowledge, the CDC hasn't updated their metrics to take that into account. And yet it would seem to me that on some level that is like the percentage of vaccination in the county and things like that would be things that we might want to be at least tracking or being aware of. So I'm wondering what the plans are for sort of looking at that, or do you have any thoughts about that?
None that I can present to you tonight, but I think it's more than fair that you would ask, and my commitment would be that I would work to develop something that I can share in subsequent meetings. Because the reason I think that question is so powerful comes back to the fact that we're going to have to learn how to live with this. And where we are right now, I hope this isn't the case, but just as in other viruses, they are often seasonal. And I think we need to be prepared that while we are maybe hitting a trough for the spring and the summer, we should be over-prepared for if something fluctuates next fall into winter.
Yeah, so I would love us to just look at that. And I understand that, there's always this underlying question, and I don't know where we are in terms of liability, in terms of health and well-being and health and safety, and where our risk lies at this point. Clearly, we would have a dramatic risk around due process, as you spoke about, in terms of if we were to continue with a mandate at this point, given the opinions that are out there in the court. So I don't know if Jennifer can answer this, but is there an understanding of what our liability or risk is on either side of this at this point?
Sure. So I think you would want to, and you can direct me if you want me to just focus on one of these issues, but it's two interrelated issues. One is what happens with the state mandate, because the state mandate is going to affect your tort immunity and liability protection. So as you sit right here tonight, there's not a state mandate, so your decision to go mask optional doesn't violate any mandate. It's not contrary to any authority that you're under. You're not violating anything. You're exercising your authority. In Illinois, when a public body exercises their authority, and especially school districts, there are several different laws that provide tort immunity that are very strong. So your decision in this current environment, your liability risk, your tort immunity is strong, and the other layers that Superintendent talked about as far as the rational reasons why you're making the decision, the local metrics, you're not making it in an arbitrary fashion, you're doing it in a thoughtful public presentation that adds to your, you're not being arbitrary, you're not being capricious with your power here. So for all those reasons, I would say that. Now, the question about the appeal, there are several other moving pieces where a state mandate could be reinstated. If that happens, I think you should consider the liability issue again, because that does affect the liability analysis. I think that's probably the best way to say it at this point. There's so many hypotheticals that could happen. It might not be productive to go all the way down those roads. So I think what I would say is your liability picture right now very much supports your decision right now, and you may want to reopen it if one of those pieces changes, whether it's a state mandate, whether it's you know, a court action, something like that.
Got one comment and one question for you, Matt. So the comment is I just also support Suzanne's request about considering changes to our dashboard going forward, and we'll encourage the use of the Metrics Advisory Council as part of that process. It sounded like an excellent suggestion, just so that we can continue to be a learning organization on this, right? And we need to evolve on it. My question is related to that. So 2 weeks ago, as a district, across both districts, we had an abrupt shift to our mask policy as a result of the court case, which I know wasn't ideal for anyone. Can you speak a little bit about what you've learned from an operational standpoint about making a switch on this policy, and ideally what sort of lead times, what sort of considerations, anything that we've learned as a district on how to do phased transitions if hopefully we won't have to do another one. But if we were to have to do another one, how to make it easier for teachers, for kids?
So I think in a perfect world, if we weren't moving on February 7th due to the TRO being enacted the Friday before, there would have been a 2-week minimum lead time. And I would not have started the conversation. So the state's moving on February 28th, so ideally we started having the conversation at or around the 15th of February. What I learned is that, or just reaffirmed my position that moving quickly is, especially when you're reducing mitigation strategies, people respond, staff and students and family members respond far more favorably if you give them a 2-week lead time. What I can't, so again, that's best case scenario. What I can't predict is if it's the opposite scenario where we need to get more aggressive with our mitigation strategies, it will likely not be a 2-week window to get into more restrictions, but coming out, I would strive for 2 weeks to move to a lesser restricted environment. Did that make sense what I was saying? Yeah. Okay. So if we have an outbreak, I'm not going to say in 2 weeks we're going to go to mask. It'll be, we're moving to mask now, and then to scale back out, it would be a slower position. And I just want to say for my own sanity, if our leadership team was creating a way to step out of masks, it would not have been in the way in which we were thrusted into it right now.
Other questions from the board for Matt?
So I would like to hear, is there consensus around remaining in a mask recommended environment?
Yes.
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 Yes. I would say yes, unless the Supreme Court takes the case and reverses it. I would not be in favor of us violating the governor's order if it was standing.
I agree.
Thank you all very much. And thank you, Jennifer, for being here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for all your support over the last 2 weeks.
Thank you, Jennifer.
We will now move to the next portion of our agenda, which is board committee reports, and we will begin with an update from the Education Committee. Suzanne?
So the Education Committee met on Thursday, February 3rd here at West Campus in Seminar B, and we were joined by Jeff McHugh, Kate Kavanaugh, Rebecca Jenkins, and Dr. Montgomery. Dr. McHugh first spoke to us about coaching, and with support and input from Kate Kavanaugh, our Executive Director of Student Services, they shared with the committee an outline of the plan for a report on coaching that will be given to the board in March. My reports have February, some things moved around today. So he started by grounding our discussion in the knowledge of the 10 roles of coaching based on research and the 4 roles which are not adequately supported within our district in our current staffing model, and especially at our elementary buildings. And so those 4 roles are learning facilitator, catalyst for change, instructional specialist, and classroom supporter. And so based on extensive learning of that the committee has done around this topic, feedback was sought and shared around the kind of information that members thought would be useful for the board and the community to know. And so when you get that presentation, it will have been impacted by the feedback shared with the committee. Shared by the committee, excuse me. Next, we spoke about Mandarin at Cherokee, and Dr. McHugh shared an update about how Mandarin is going at Cherokee with the change from 60 minutes of daily instruction in previous years to 30 minutes put in place this year. He provided context around the history of the program, the challenges that recent changes were made to address, how it's going, and what the plan is going to be moving forward. And this change allows for students taking Mandarin to access the full breadth of the District 67 curriculum, which had not been the case historically. The committee provided feedback, and this will also be presented at an upcoming board meeting. Next, we just had a brief update on the 2 curricular reviews that are happening this year. Dr. McHugh first shared District 67's review cycle, which I believe was shared at our last board meeting, and it has recently been documented. So while this process has been used in the district for a while, he actually and the team helped to document it, so it is now going to be used moving forward. The cycle has 4 phases, and the timeline for implementation of those phases is dependent on the breadth and complexity of the curricular area being reviewed. So this year, the K-8 reading review is a lot more complex. It's K-8, it's all of reading. This is a big deal in a K-8 curriculum. And so just phase 1 of that review is going to be completed this school year. He and Denise Galazianos, our district literacy coach, have taken a very deep dive into research and best practices in reading instruction and are developing learning academies for our K-4 and 5-8 staff. The ELA committee has been engaged in this already in refining the D67 reading philosophy, analyzing our student data and the state standards. The Regional Office of Education has also been engaged to support the analysis of our IAR data, and the reading review is in phase 1, as I said, and phase 2 will take place next school year. The Math 6-8 review is much more focused. He and Becky Saxana, the district math coach, have been leading this effort. Due to the much narrower scope of it, this review is currently in phase 2, and at this point, the 6-8 teachers, along with Jeff and Becky, will be teaching multiple lessons from each of the resources under consideration for the future, and they hope to be in a position to bring a recommendation to the board later this spring. Next, Dr. McHugh spoke to us about the material reconsideration procedure for the district. He explained that there's been a recent uptick in book challenges nationwide and that our community is not an exception to this. The high school recently revised and documented their process and procedure for addressing book challenges. He reviewed their process as well as the process within our district, which was already articulated. A recent book challenge in the 7-8 collection provided the opportunity to implement the process and reflect on any further documentation or adjustments that might be needed. Dr. McHugh then sought input from the group, primarily around the process for selecting committee members to serve when there are challenges. The group recommended that convening an ad hoc committee for each challenge, drawing on existing committees of parents, teachers, administrators, and staff and librarians would be a useful way forward. And he took all that into account. Just for those of you who don't know, Dr. McHugh has also been a librarian, so he felt like it was important to document. He led the process having a lot of background information of his own, and he wants to make sure that the process is well documented so that in the case that an administrator who has not been a librarian before were in that position, they would have all of the tools that they needed to run the process. Then we just have a time where committee members can give input into possible future topics, and at this meeting, one of our committee members requested that at some point in the future, we consider exploring the impact of technology on students and the role of technology in our classrooms and schools, which has interesting play with what you had to say about what 8th graders were saying. So hopefully at some point we will be exploring that. Our next meeting for the committee is April 7th at noon.
Thank you, Suzanne. Questions for Suzanne? Seeing none. Alice, want to give us an update on finance and ops?
Finance and operations will be meeting here tomorrow morning. All are welcome.
Thank you, Alice. Rich, you want to give an update on policy?
The policy committee has met twice in order to handle press issue 108, which is the most extensive press issue that I've ever seen. D115 has gone over this with us. I want to thank my fellow colleagues from 67, Emily Burnhall and Annie Helms, for helping lead this charge with all of these policy committee readings, the review of them, the review with our current policy, comparisons. I also want to thank Tiana Adams for helping us create a very thick booklet of all the policies and helping us charge through them. The policy committees are on the action items, and this is a first reading, so the public can take a look, read through them, and comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Questions for Rich? Seeing none, we'll move to liaison reports, and we'll start with Suzanne for an update on True North.
The True North Leadership Council met on February 9th. In my report, you'll see a variety of things. I just want to bring your attention to a couple. One is there are significant staffing shortages that True North is experiencing, but so are neighboring districts, especially around the teaching assistant employee group. And so we are in the process of conversations with that association at True North to try to get to a more favorable place. And so we were having extensive discussions about that this past month in executive session. We are still working on facilities planning, strategic planning, the beginnings of budgetary planning for next year. And Dr. Schneider at each meeting, as I've said before, leads a professional learning topic, and this month's was on federal, state, and local funding for special education. And leadership councils were led in that this month. And one of the big takeaways in the funding question with special education that I've come to it's now just a part of my understanding that I did not know before, and I do think it is important for board members to understand, is that when special education legislation was initially introduced, there was an acknowledgement that often there would be significant extra expenses that go along with meeting the needs of students in the least restrictive environment and in general education spaces. And at that time, it's like our largest unfunded mandate, if you will. The federal government at that time said we will cover 40% of the extra expenses that districts have. In the history since the law was enacted, I think the average is 13% that they've covered, and local districts have had to pick up the tab on the rest of that. And so whenever anyone asks me, what in the space of the universe should the federal government be doing to support education in our country, my answer is just fully fund special ed at the 40%. Like, if you do nothing else, if you just do that, all of us could take care of a lot more of our own stuff and do an even better job of taking care of all of our students. So I do have some resources related to that I did not attach this month, and I will make sure that the resources that Dr. Schneider shared are shared with all of you so that you can continue to educate yourself on this information. And our next meeting is coming up on March 9th at 7 p.m., and we might actually be hosting it here. We're trying to figure that out right now because one of our spaces where we used to host our meetings is being used as a classroom this year, and so we've been hosting it in a gym, and it's a little less than ideal, so we might be coming here for a field trip. We'll see.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne. Any questions for Suzanne? Seeing none. Carl, do you want to give us an update legislatively? Thank you, Carl. Any questions for Carl? Seeing none. Rich, you want to give an update on the Spirit?
I do not have a Spirit report. They may have met, but I probably wasn't invited again. Thank you.
Well, if any members of the Spirit are watching, please let me know how we can get Rich back into your good graces. Emily, do you have an update from the Executive APT?
Oh, Rich, you always make it so hard to follow you. Yes, of course. Good evening, everyone. I know, without a report. Good evening. I always have the privilege of sharing the wonderful happenings throughout the district. So this is just kind of a February recap. District-wide, on the 17th, the high school principal, Dr. Erin Leonard, and her admin team visited our District 67 community. During this presentation, they provided an in-depth look at the high school, answered questions, shared tips for transitioning to freshman year. We wanted to thank all of the high school administration for the opportunity to get to know them and for sharing this helpful information with our 67 community. The Spread the Love Valentine's Day campaign. The Executive APT SEL group helped with creating Valentine's Day cards in each buildings. Over 800 cards were distributed to 4 area nursing homes and local Lake Forest organizations. This one's really exciting. The Valentine's Day parties were held at the elementary building and enjoyed by all. Thank you for the room parents and other parent volunteers for helping execute the fun. Now taking it individually to the building, Sheridan held on the 11th. We Think You're Super lunch. Soups and chilies were served. It's kind of a fun Super Bowl theme, as well as dips and breads and all that kind of stuff were served. At Everett, they held their glow party. It was great and well-attended event with dancing and activities of all kinds. Thank you for the party planning committee for an excellent event. At Cherokee, they hosted a cookie walk on the 11th for all the teachers and staff in honors of Valentine's Day. A shout out of appreciation to all that contributed. And at DPM, as you heard, they hosted Tom Coverly, the illusionist, earlier this month. It was rescheduled from a show planned in January. The kids really seemed to enjoy their first assembly, and the all-district evening show was really well attended with about 200 folks in attendance. And for some upcoming happenings, please mark your calendar and save the date for an all-district annual APT meeting on March 10th. This meeting will start at 9. And then at 9:30, they're going to be voting on the following slate for the APT Executive Board for the 2022-2024 school years. The Vice President, Shannon Shader, the Treasurer, Catherine Najjar, Recording Secretary, Kelly Kelly, Cherokee APT President, Jillian Goodfriend, and Sheridan President, Elise Butler. At this event, we will be hearing from Heidi Stevens, the creative director for Parent Nation, a new initiative at University of Chicago's TMW Center for Early Learning and Public Health. Parent Nation, briefly, works to build a society that ensures all parents have the information, resources, and support they need to optimally raise their children. Prior to joining Parent Nation, Heidi worked at the Chicago Tribune for 23 years, where she wrote a daily column called Balancing Act. She was awarded the Ann Keegan Award for Distinguished Journalism in 2018, and she maintains a nationally syndicated column once a week. So that's all I have for you. Just a reminder, March 10, meeting is at 9:30, but they are starting at 9 a.m. with coffee. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you to the APT for everything that that organization is doing across our district. We will now move to our action items for the evening. May I have a motion to approve the Policy Committee Charter?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions about the Policy Committee Charter? Seeing none. Tiana, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. England?
Aye.
Ms. Bernal?
Aye.
Ms. LeVert?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Ms. Sands?
Aye.
Ms. Helms?
Aye.
Mr. Carr? Motion carries.
Thank you, Tiana. May I have a motion to approve Policy 7-180, the first reading?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions from the board about this action item? Seeing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Carr? Ms. Helms?
Aye.
Ms. LeVert?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Ms. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. England?
Aye.
Ms. Bernal?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Tiana. May I have a motion to approve Press Issue 108, also the first reading?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Are there questions or comments from the board on this action item?
As the committee chair for policy, I just wanted to point it out that the Press Issue 108, which has all the policies that are written here, is available in the link for the public to view, and specifically with policy 3:50, administrative personnel other than the superintendent. We wanted to point out that as part of the effort to clarify our shared services model, both the 115 and 67 boards have worked to establish a compensation policy for shared service staff. The establishment of this policy should increase transparency and provide consistency for the community administrators and potential new employees to our district.
Thank you, Rich. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you, Rich and Policy Committee, for your work, as well as aligning with 115 on this. May I have a roll call vote, please? Tiana?
Mr. England?
Aye.
Ms. Levert?
Aye.
Ms. Sands?
Aye.
Ms. Helms?
Aye.
Ms. Bernal?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Ms. Carrar? Motion carries.
May I have a motion to approve the Human Resources Report as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments on the HR report? Seeing none, may I have a roll call vote, please, Tiana?
Mr. Carrar? Ms. Helms?
Aye.
Ms. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Ms. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. England?
Aye.
Ms. Bernal?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Tiana, and congratulations to Sam and Megan. We will now move to our consent agenda. As a reminder, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a board member. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items, which include an approval of disbursements, payrolls, financial statements on July 2021, minutes of a joint special meeting on January 25th, 2022, minutes of an executive session on January 25th, 2022, minutes of a regular meeting on January 25th, 2022, minutes of a second executive session on January 25th, 2022, minutes of a joint special meeting on February 8th, 2022, and minutes of an executive session on February 8th, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or requests to remove consent agenda items? Seeing none, may I have a roll call vote, please, Tiana?
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Ms. Bernal?
Aye.
Ms. Levert?
Aye.
Ms. Carrar? Ms. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. England?
Aye.
Ms. Helms?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you, Tiana. We'll move to Freedom of Information Act requests. There are 3. Freedom Foundation, the status is complete. Local Labs, the status is also complete. And Heather Clements, which is in progress. We will now move to our second opportunity of the evening for public participation. I will not reiterate the guidelines that I mentioned before, but those remain in effect. This opportunity can be about any topic, not necessarily on the agenda. So with that, are there any members of the public who would like to address the board at this time?
Hi, I'm Colleen Gustafson. Thank you. It's so nice to see you guys. I just wanted to say that my kindergartner has had the best time in school. I haven't seen her this happy and excited to go to school in a long time, and she was thrilled. She's been thrilled not to wear a mask. I did ask her after the first day, you know, how was it? Were kids nice? Were kids still wearing masks and all that? And she always surprises me, but she had the best response. She's like, there were kids with them, and then there were kids without. And that's okay. Everybody can do what they want to do and what makes them happy. And I just felt so proud of her, and thank you. So please just, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
Good
evening. Ryan Martin. A robust conversation there about the lawsuit and the implications of it and what it means for our children. I didn't hear any discussion, though, about the efficacy of the masks, just whether or not we're going to wear them or not wear them. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with the Illinois Supreme Court and the governor's actions. I would reiterate that the CDC back in mid-January came out and said that the cloth masks that most of our children are wearing, that many of us are wearing, that some of us, in fact, are wearing in this room tonight, don't really work as well as we thought, maybe not work at all. So I guess if we get to that point, I would appreciate if this board had a constructive conversation, potentially involve some different medical experts on what the more specific requirement might be. I think if we're going to expect that our children are wearing something to protect them, we should take the time to understand, does it actually offer them the protection that we think it does? A number of you on this board, including the superintendent, have talked about some of the damage that the masking has done. We had a beautiful presentation from the middle schoolers today, this evening, about this notion of kindness, and I think a lot of that we've needed to focus on encouraging that, in part because our children have lost the ability to read facial cues, nonverbal communication, and any conversation about masking or not needs to be comprehensive. And I would hope that this board would take time to understand all of those different factors, include the public in that conversation, include the parents in that conversation. I echo Colleen's sentiment that my children have not been happier than the last 2 weeks to be able to see their friends for the first time in 2 years, in some cases to see their teacher's face for the first time ever. And I think that's a somewhat sad commentary on where we are. In talking to different business owners and other people, it's interesting that other states not that far from us aren't living through these same protocols. And if we're going to really base this on science and data, then let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Great. We'll now move to announcements. On Tuesday, March 1st, 2022, Matt mentioned this earlier, but there is a District 115 High School Facilities Master Plan Community Forum starting at 6:30. Strongly encourage anyone who has kids in the 67 district to participate, learn what the experience may look like or could look like for your students at the high school. On Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 is our next regularly scheduled District 67 Board of Education meeting right here at 7 p.m. On Friday, March 18th is when spring break begins at the close of the school day, and Monday, March 28th is the first day that school reopens again. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn the City of Lake Forest School District 67 Board meeting for February 22nd, 2022? Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a voice vote, please? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Just a quick point of clarification. 6 p.m. So that was the previous time to allow for other meetings that are happening. So 6 p.m. is when it starts.